Welcome back to yet another episode of How I Made It Through and our newest addition to our podcast series, Pause for Answers. Answers to questions that people repeatedly ask. What happens to our souls after we die? How can I connect with loved ones who have crossed over? How do I learn how to channel spirit and what happens in heaven? With our combined experience and years of research, we recognize that between the two of us, we possess a wealth of knowledge and wisdom that we want to share with you. We invite you to tune in and share your questions with us and our How I Made It Through community as we all continue to expand our understanding and learning.
I love it. It's so great to see you, Bernadette.
I'm so happy that we're doing this. It is a really wonderful addition to our um, to our How I Made It Through podcast.
Exactly. And what I hope it really encourages is that people can reach out to us with any question that they have regarding spirituality, the afterlife, what we're here for. And we are not saying, I mean, this is for entertainment purposes only. We are not saying this is the end all be all. This is the cumulative data that we have collected over the years to say, from what we've learned, this seems to be standing out. And with that, the question for our first inaugural episode is the question, who meets us once we cross the veil? So I want to just lob that over to you for you to just share what you know, what you've experienced, and then I'll share mine as well.
Mm. I love that we chose that question as the first one because I think it's something that people think about all the time and worry about, at least.
Yes.
So, from my experience, I've had experience not only my own spiritually transformative experiences, but I've also had experience as an end of life doula. I've worked with elders and helped them understand what the crossing may look like. And I've been with many as they are getting close to that time. And one of the things that it is often family that will greet us when we cross.
Mhm.
And it is the family that you love. So, from what I've heard and experienced in different conversations, is if if you just want your mom to be there, like that's who you really want, that's who will be there. Your mom will be there to reach out to you, and if it is more than one family member will be there, so that you will feel the comfort and the transition will feel safe and comfortable. Because I think that that's a huge worry a lot of people have. So,
Yes.
and then also what I remember people sharing with me is that if it's somebody who's older, so this is not somebody who has had a near-death experience, but somebody who is getting ready to cross, or maybe somebody who is ill and is also getting ready to cross, they will begin to see family members ahead of time.
That's right.
So, and they will see them, sometimes they'll come in dreams, but often they'll just see visions of them. And I had this one elderly woman, she was so fun. And she started to say to me, she's like, I see people. There are people here. But she was confused. She goes, I don't recognize them. I don't think they're my family.
Mm.
And then we talked about that sometimes when spirit comes back to visit us, that they come back in their young body, not their old body. And
Yeah.
so you see the young version of your dad or your mom, and not the sick or, very old person that crossed over. Um, so that's just does that resonate with you, Kristen?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, since you took the vantage point of a more advanced age, an elderly person passing over, I want to share what happens that I repeatedly hear when a child, particularly a young child, passes over. So, a lot of parents are thinking, well, you know, worst thing that could happen to anyone is to have a child die, but who will meet them? Because maybe they didn't know the grandparents. And so the purpose of this initial crossing over, because you are still connected to your earthbound energy, is that number one, there is no fear on the other side, but you're not fully crossed over. So there still can be elements of fear. And so the purpose is to be met with someone who will alleviate and appease and calm any worry and will meet you with such benevolent love and light and recognition, which begs the question, well, if a child dies, who will meet them? And
Mhm.
often it will be a grandparent.
Yes.
It will be, grandparents or aunts or uncles, someone who is part of the family lineage.
Mhm.
And what I have heard too is that they will explain who they are, but the child, as they advance, their soul advances into the afterlife, into their original home, there's a recognition. The
Mhm.
person they were on earth would say, I don't know who that person is, but it's part of a larger soul family. So a grandmother may greet them, and if there's still fear present, to say, "I'm your mommy's mommy, and I've been with you always," or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be, to really help comfort them. But
Mhm.
then as they advance, they recognize that this is what I hear at least.
Mhm.
This child may have reincarnated hundreds of times. And so there's a much more expansive soul
Mhm.
family for which they are a part. And
Mhm.
that is where the real recognition is.
Yes.
Yeah. I was gonna say something else, which connects to this larger soul family. So, yes, they may not recognize these apparitions, so to speak, that show up, as they're lying in bed close to crossing over, maybe a
Mhm.
few weeks or days or whatever the case may be. But some of those people may be part of that larger soul family.
Mhm.
And there's like, I can't give it a name, but I feel like I know them. Why do I
Yes.
know them?
Yes, it is a spirit. It is a spirit recognition because it is our home. It
Yes.
really is our home,
Mhm.
and I think as we raise the consciousness and understand that we are all spiritual beings, and we get some more knowledge around that, it begins to make sense about
Yes.
having these different lives, and people also, not only are they greeted by family, but i- it is often that whatever your spiritual training or whatever, in this earthly lifetime. So if you have Christianity or Buddhism, or that you will be greeted by those who are connected with your spiritual understanding. So many have talked about Jesus, that they
Yes.
have crossed and Jesus has been there. I've heard in many times the angels coming in. So it is, there is a family of spiritual beings, and some are the ones that we recognize or that are part of our soul family,
Right.
but some are higher beings that we also recognize, but we may not recognize them from this lifetime. But once we cross and we have begun to acclimate back to where we came from, we have the understanding of who we are, and it's pure love.
Pure
I
love.
mean, you and I both have talked to so many people who have had near-death experiences, and the overriding feeling of when somebody crosses is that incredible feeling of love. So
Yes,
so whoever it is that is greeting us, and it's love that we don't even know the feeling here, that
exactly.
it's so much greater.
So all-encompassing. The
Yes.
term that always comes up is bliss consciousness. It's
Mhm.
just euphoria and bliss is what I hear repeatedly. And we often hear those stories of angelic beings,
Mhm.
large angels sort of hovering and greeting. So, yes, it is loved ones. Yes, it's guides, it's masters, it's spiritual beings, it's angels. Some people say
Mhm.
they sit down with God.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
There's so many different ways, and I love that you brought up that it really is all shaped by our belief systems on earth, so that as
Mhm.
we transition, it can feel like such a shock. Some people are like, "Whoa, I'm dead."
Yeah.
that it can be as comforting as possible to meet us where we're at with our belief systems, but that all belief systems lead to Rome, so to speak, lead to heaven. And what I think is also really important, which is part of this question, is when people ask what happens when we die, when we first cross over. I think for many, and this is really my greatest fear, is the pain of dying in the physical body.
Hmm.
And so what I continually hear from people who've had near-death experiences is that either right at the moment of impact, whether it's a knife or a gun or a fall or whatever the case is, the soul lifts from the body so that that person can be spared the agony of the physical suffering, and they are lifted very, very quickly. Because I think that's also when we see people dying, we don't want them to suffer. But
Hmm.
it's often calling out to spirit, whether that's Jesus or mother or whomever it is. The soul is lifted to be spared that suffering
Yes.
where they can go then. And that's the near death experience where they sort of hover and can see the surgery or
Right.
the train
Right.
wreck or whatever it may be, but they're
Hmm.
not inhabiting that physical plane.
Yeah. Well, what is so interesting because there's two sides of this. And the side that we were just talking about, that like that near death, I mean, or that instant, when somebody is crossing. But also for those who are getting ready to you know to cross, that there is this it is peaceful. It can be very peaceful. So when there's a family member, and this is the work that people who are end of life doulas, and the training that I received, it is about opening up the conversation so
Yes.
that we talk about, in our culture, we don't talk about death a lot,
True.
but death is a part of living. It is as beautiful as welcoming in the new baby, and
Yes.
allowing someone who's had their time here and they're tired and they're ready to go home, and helping them to know that this is a beautiful experience. And mentioned earlier that they begin to see people, they begin to see loved ones, or experience angels that are around them. But it's also beginning to have the conversations with them and letting them know that you're going to go to sleep here and you're going to wake up there. And
Mm.
that is often something that I have shared with many of the elders that I have sat with, as they are, and holding their hand, and just letting them know that it is okay. It is a beautiful experience. Many people have a lot of agitation, if they're uncertain,
Yes.
but there's so many ways now that there's aid in helping somebody prepare them,
Yes.
and the family, to let the family know that when they cross, they're going to start right away letting you know that they made it, and giving you signs, and
Mm.
knowing that they are at peace. So there's just some incredibly beautiful things that we haven't been taught, and so we go through life with these questions and these fears, that because we don't know what the other side is like.
Right, right. And I love that. I think that should be another one to talk about what are some of the signs either immediately thereafter or going forward with the rest of your life because they are ever present and you can call them forward. As a way of perhaps segueing out of this conversation, but I want to make sure that if there's more that you want to share, that we leave space for that. I
Yes.
was just reminded as you were talking, I have two dear friends, really sisters to me. I've known them since I was 3, and I'm still in my mid-50s. I'm close with them. But they talked about when their father passed, and he was lying in bed, and shortly before he died, his eyes opened really wide,
Hmm.
and tears were, I believe, if maybe I made this part up, but I don't think so. He was just looking, they couldn't see anything, but he
Hmm.
said, "Ah, so beautiful, they're singing to me, they're
Yeah.
singing to me." And he
Yeah.
was, like, awestruck with the beauty and the love, and they were vicariously able to see that he
Yeah.
was being greeted. So inasmuch as it's the day of his passing of his earthly bodily death.
Right.
It's a welcome home and a celebration
Mhm.
on the other side,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
just always really moved me.
That's a beautiful I'm so glad that you shared that because, yeah, I've heard that story over and over again, and it's true, and there are, it's even being studied, and the how our consciousness goes back and forth between the earthly plane and the heavenly plane in this time right before that we cross over, and that so family often experiences some of this,
Yeah.
them being able to see to the other side and being able to see the loved ones that are waiting for them.
Mm.
And
Okay.
there there is one thing I wanted to share, and it's about this book that I have read, and I've shared this book with so many people. And it's called The Testimony of Light, and the name of the author is Helen Greaves. And this is the story of a nun whose name was Frances. And Frances was an educator, and she left the convent because she wanted to connect with spirit. She had such this interest. And so she did. And so I'm in her earthly life. She was very interested in understanding our connection with spirit. And she passed away, and when she passed away, I can't remember whether she said she was going to come back or whether this is something that just happened. But after she crossed into heaven, she came back to Helen, and she started to do something, help Helen do something called automatic writing.
Who is Helen?
Helen is the author of the book, and
Oh,
Helen,
Helen Greaves. I see what you're saying.
yes.
I didn't realize there
And
was a
Helen was a dear friend of hers. And
Mm.
so Helen, came in, Frances started coming in and telling her the whole story of what it was like when she crossed over. And she became, I references as, the greeter at Walmart. She became a greeter for those who were crossing. And she was shown in her habit, because for those people who were crossing, that would make them feel comfortable.
Mm.
And so she helped people in their transition. And then she went on to talk about all the different, like what it looks like and what it feels
Mm.
like, and how she progressed in her learning and knowledge after she was in heaven. And this book was written in, I think, 1969, so it's
Oh.
an old book, but it is a beautiful story of this, someone who crossed and that was able to come back and share this story. So I
Yes.
encourage anybody that has this, fear or knows a family member that's getting close to passing and is just, feeling uncertain about it. This book is an easy read, and it is on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon. I think it might even be on, that you can listen to it. But
Nice.
it is called The Testimony of Light, and the author is Helen Greaves.
Gorgeous. That's so wonderful. That's so wonderful. Okay, I keep saying I have one more thing, and this will be it, but there's just we could talk about this for a very long time. I know so many of us, myself included, actually feel like we have some of our closest relationships with our fur babies, with our animals. And so
Mhm,
this idea that her role was to be the one to greet, right? The
mhm,
greeter at Walmart, the greeter to heaven.
yeah,
Um, you often hear that
mhm,
people have different roles.
mhm,
Some people pass over and they help people. Maybe they were someone who died of an overdose or of a suicide,
yes,
and they help rehabilitate and acclimate
mhm,
people to the afterlife who have had similar crossings, but also
mhm,
animals greet
mhm,
us.
yeah,
So, some people are like, "I don't wanna see my father. I don't wanna see," and it's
yes,
the comfort of, their
yes,
collie or whomever
yes,
is really who they want to see, that
mhm,
animals already, to my awareness, they are not angels, but they are from the angelic realm, and they
mhm,
cross back and forth far more quickly and easily and are tuned in to that high vibration of love in a way that so many of us have to work to achieve. They just
mhm.
naturally do it. So, of course, they are on the other side.
Mhm.
Of course, they will greet us.
And you are correct that um, the spirit realm wants us to cross in the most peaceful and beautiful way possible. So whatever it is that is going to support your soul's crossing is going to be there for you. So if it's for somebody that is needs that, I really want Jesus to be there, then Jesus will be there.
Yes.
And if it's somebody that wants to see family or see their loved pet, if that is what it is and part of that is so that ahead of time, if they know that that's going to be there, they can already begin to settle down, and
Mhm.
and so that the crossing can be peaceful.
Mm.
And yeah, so
I
it is,
yeah.
yeah.
I feel like that's a beautiful place to end it, and I hope that this, fosters
Mhm,
comfort and curiosity and research, whatever it is that you need, that these
mhm,
conversations can help people to
mhm,
assuage their fear and trust not just for themselves, but for their loved ones, that they are
mhm.
not gone. They
Yes,
are they are in heaven.
yeah.
Alright.
And
Thank you,
w
Bernadette.
and I was going to just say, and please share your questions or your experience, or, share, all of those things, and comment, because this is about you. It is about opening this up to the questions that you have or others have, and we're all gonna learn together.
Exactly. So subscribe, tell a friend. We're gonna answer any and all questions. Um, well, if they're weird and bizarre and not appropriate, we won't.
Maybe not.
But, we're gonna go there if it feels right. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on How I Made It Through.
How I Made It Through is produced and distributed by EIQ Media, LLC. Elevate your emotional IQ with podcasts and content focused on overcoming adversity, leadership, mental health, entrepreneurship, spiritually transformative experiences, and more.